if the Hangout is live, is the message that I've got, and the button is orange, so that means we are there, and I'm going to trust the technology this month. I was always saying, are we live? Are we live? I'm just going to say we are live. So welcome to our audience, and welcome to our guests. The three of us are visible in the film strip for the audience, so they know the three of us are here. And probably the easy thing to do is just to let Sheila and Gina introduce themselves. I'm so pleased to have my co-host Sheila Schuster here. And that is a wonderful way for me to end every month, to have Sheila here to give her words of wisdom. Such a special lady, and you might tell the world why I think you're so special, and if you don't, then I will tell them why I think you're so special.
Well, yeah, I can't go there. I have no idea.
Okay.
But I'll tell you a little. I'm a self-care coach, and my area of expertise is stress management. I have a certification in grief counseling as well as nutrition. So, you know, I work with people in adapting to all kinds of change and helping them to take care of themselves so they can prepare themselves for a typical life coach. And a life coach to me is someone who's going to give you action plans and things to work on to move forward. And I'm kind of the base before that. That's sort of how I see my role. And that's what I do.
And you do it very well, and you do it in a very friendly way. And not only do you have great content, but you share it in a way that people can understand. And, you know, I did a post about you just the other day about your recent interview on managing stress. That's just a complex topic, and you are able just to sort of cut through it and say, and here is what that's all about, and here's what you can practically do about it. So I think you're special because you blend the common sense and the professional knowledge base together so that we can all take action steps. I think you have some extremely wonderful skills.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And another person that I think has some great skills is I got my frog in my throat. Gina is with us today. We really have met only a few weeks ago and spent some time together, and Gina was gracious enough to be on our coaches hangar, our coaches hangout, helping other cancer coaches deal with some of the issues that coaches bring to bear. And I thought it would be good to have Sheila, or man, I am really confused today.
What's in that kale shake?
I know. Did you have a kale shake?
I must have had that. I tell you, it's just the heat that we're having here. I don't like this high 90s. I must be dehydrated. Get my blood pressure cuff out. I need to know what my heart and blood is doing today. But anyways, starting again, back to Gina, if you could share with the group a little bit about your focus and perhaps why you're going to talk to us about new beginnings after cancer.
Absolutely. So my name is Gina Costa-Goldfarb. I am a certified professional life coach. I am also what's called an Energy Leadership Index practitioner, and I'm also an associate certified coach with the International Coaching Federation. I have been in the shoes of a caregiver. I'm a breast cancer survivor. The name of my business is New Beginnings Coaching Services, LLC. And what I do is I work with women diagnosed with breast cancer, and I help them cope step by step with the emotional and physical challenges so that they can feel confident and control of their lives once again. And, you know, Dave, you and I have spoke about this. You know, it's definitely about the cancer journey, but it's really about the way we show up in life on a daily basis. So, you know, it's really about going to our core and kind of looking within and seeing how we show up in life so that we can relate it to the challenges in our lives. And again, you know, as Sheila mentioned, the managing stress. So this is also about managing change in your life. And I work with people who want to create new beginnings from, from those experiences. I've kind of lived living new beginnings my whole life, and I'm very passionate, about the cancer niche. So that's why I'm here today, showing up. And, I'm so delighted to be with both of you because Dave, I think we connected immediately and we've developed a bond and friendship. And Sheila, I'm kind of feeling that same energy with you. So I totally, just filled with gratitude for being able to be here today. So thank you.
I think that's a great word, gratitude. And it was something that really wasn't part of my thought processes at all a few years ago. And it evolved during my cancer journey and became something that I started to understand as I met Sheila and started to understand what one can do when one becomes mindful and aware and, as Sheila says, slow down and appreciate what is around you. So I think gratitude is one of those things that I hope, Gina, you'll talk about today as part of a new beginning. I don't know whether that is in fact something that happens to all cancer patients, but certainly for me, it was something that only became recognizable to me as a result of the cancer journey.
Yeah, absolutely. Gratitude, I think, has so much to do with it because, we face these emotional challenges in our lives, but, I think there's always someone else that has it a little bit more difficult than we do, even though our path may be, truly difficult itself. And I've realized this, again, Dave, I just turned 50, so I've been going through a lot of changes myself. And experiencing my own new beginnings once again, and, looking at new things and having fear around them, but then also kind of, and I don't mean like by staying in a safe place, but just having gratitude for all that I do have in my life. So I do want to experience them more, and I do want to have new beginnings in my life, but I also have gratitude for everything that I have in my life and every person that is in my life. So that's huge. And definitely what Sheila said about slowing down, there's so many things that we do in life that we don't have to do. And when we take those off of our list, we can just spend some time in being who we are, and, just experiencing life in a much different way and in a much more peaceful way of living and energetically doing things that we really want to do instead of things that we feel like we have to do that are on our to-do list. So I love, that you mentioned that, Sheila. And then, Dave, and stop me if I'm giving too much here, but these thoughts just came up for me. We also talked about embracing death. I told you I was reading this book called Broken Open, and I've never really had a fear around dying, as I said to you, I think because of my personal faith, but how, when we embrace death, and that can be in our physical realm, but also in terms of loss, loss due to cancer, loss in relationships, loss in all areas of our lives. So when we embrace, death, it really allows us to fully live and create new beginnings.
Or you've just set the stage for some comments from Sheila. I know Sheila, and I think you've got to say something about this.
Yeah, I mean, gosh, I kept taking notes because every other word it was sparking some memories. I guess the really important thing for me when we started talking about the gratitude is I've done an awful lot of work in palliative and hospice care as well, and there's such a difference in the patients who have a perspective where they can look at life and accept it, not only accept it, but really embrace it. And you talked about embracing death, but it even goes beyond that. It's one of the things that I teach in my classes is learning to love everything. Is there a way for you to get to a place where you can see the things that used to drive you crazy, the things you don't like, and make that shift? And it just makes you more gentle and more malleable, and you just see different things. also, as far as, you cannot have gratitude if you're rushing around. And I love when Gina was saying, we think we have so much to do, and all we do is fill our minds with these anxious thoughts about what's next and what's next. And I was there. I did it. In my early 40s, I was a nutcase. So it's very common, but this idea of slowing down and learning to be mindful is transformational. And for some of us, it takes getting hit over the head with major losses to get there. And I'm sure that's the reason that I'm where I am today, is because of my losses.
Isn't a new beginning a scary thing? I mean, I certainly found it to be so. I was very comfortable in the old Dave, the Dave BC, as I call me, before cancer. And I thought that my world was just fine. And I made all the compromises and decided life was going to meet my needs. And then suddenly I was put in a situation where I had to question, really, who am I and where do I want to go? And in a number of people that I've talked to, I wasn't alone in the cancer hospital, where we were saying, are we going to die? And if we are dying, where does that take us? And if we get to live, well, what does the word live really mean? How are we going to spend our life, regardless of whether we're 45 or 65? We start to have to decide to stop. Forcibly we're stopped in motion, definitely slowed down. I mean, I'm tied to my bed. I can't do anything. And it's really now a question of, do I actually have anything in my head about where I'm going and what I'm going to do? So I found that to be very complicated and very scary because I didn't have anyone to help me through that evaluation process.
It's so appropriate what you said, Dave, about, just being in that bed and, just kind of thinking where life is kind of going. And you actually raised some thought in myself where, had I not, and this is where we can come in as coaches, to help people to create their new beginnings. I think with the tools that I had in my tool belt and the personal development that I had done, this was like a forced period of rest for me. So I knew I had to stop, and Sheila, you could probably relate to this. So what was I going to do to keep myself busy during this forced rest? And I actually used it to my advantage to take a step back and, to reassess and to see where I wanted to go. So, again, it is about switching that perspective. So I have to be in this place, and we don't want to have have-tos and shoulds in our lives. But if we are in a place where we have to be in a forced situation, excuse me, why not use that to our advantage?
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think one of the things that I just realized recently is there was this thing that happened to me after my losses, and I had this group of losses all in a row within 5 or 6 months, everything piled up together. I started saying yes to things that were uncomfortable to me, and I don't know whether I just had this renewed energy that I didn't have before, because I was like Dave, going through life and everything was fine. I didn't think anything was wrong. I thought it was all right. But that's just it. It was almost apathetic. It was almost like, it's fine, it's not wonderful, it's not terrible, it's just okay. And I feel like this new opportunity that I have to really embrace and kind of be excited about some change is so much more living this life. It's diving down in instead of skating across it. I just feel like a rejuvenated, more alive person.
And something I want to share with you also, Sheila, which I think kind of is parallel to that. So, I'm, again, obviously always creating new beginnings and coming into 50, just looking at a lot of things in my life and building my coaching practice. And as you know, when we do this work, we change ourselves. So I was waking up or had been waking up in fear for like several months. And I was like, gee, what's going on? Like, I know I'm doing a lot of things differently, and, I'm getting out there, and I'm exposed to all these new events and whatever, but I don't understand this. Why am I waking up in such fear and anxiety every day? This is, like you said, this is new. There's a fine line between anxiety and excitement, and why can't I step into that excitement? What's going on here? Until then, and again, this is where coaching comes in, until I reached deep and really found the answer myself, which was that when I was growing up as a kid, I always was kind of the person who kept the peace to keep things okay, so that there would be no drama, or, not to get into details, but no fights or anything like that. So I realized I was, I had to go back to my core to get the lesson, to see that what I was doing was I was experiencing new, and you just didn't do that. When I grew up, you just kind of stayed in this box, and you just kind of made everything be okay and stay okay. So it really is about awareness and that digging deep. And, and again, it doesn't happen in just, 3 months of coaching. The clients really, if they want it, they really need to be committed to the change. And that's why I love this work, because it's creating that personal development for ourselves, but also then sharing that in a certain way and giving our clients the tools, so that if they want to, really dig deep and create change in their lives, they can do it as well.
But it's not necessarily an easy thing to do, is it? I mean, you're now sitting there saying, I've got a new journey ahead of me, and we're euphemistically calling it a new beginning. But I'm wondering if there's not a need to get rid of elements of where you've been. It's almost like a grieving process that you've got to go through. Again, personalizing it for my journey, there was a need for me to grieve the loss of the old Dave before I could accept the beginning of a new Dave who was trying to find a new normal. That the new normal was something I wasn't prepared for. Everyone in my treatment program said, you're almost ready to be discharged, and now you can get back to living the life that you had. And I said, I'm confused. I don't think I'm going to have the life that I had before. I seem to have a new kind of life, and I'm struggling to try and put some structure around where I'm moving forward. It wasn't like, just a new journey that was starting off. This was something quite different and required a lot of investigation as to who I was inwardly, where I needed to go on this new beginning to establish a new normal, and having to fully accept the end of or loss of the kind of person I was before. Is that not really how this journey works?
Oh my God, I am so grateful that you brought that up, because, sometimes coaching can make things sound so easy when we talk about coaching, or the way that I'm sitting here, just kind of describing my journey. You might say, wow, how did she do that so quickly? So I'm so happy that you brought that up. So one of the things that or kind of the model that I follow in my coaching is, so this experience is all about our emotions. So we have to experience those emotions fully, in order to get to acceptance, which is where, I had spoken to you about the various different energy levels that we talk about in my coaching, which is called core energy coaching. And it's okay to be in lower energy levels. In fact, it's beneficial, because you can be in a state of being a victim, or you can be angry, but you have to be aware of that in order to get to the higher levels of energy. So in other words, you have to experience that that loss, or that difficult or excruciating time to, and this, Sheila, from your losses, because I've had losses as well. I'd lost my mother and gave birth to my daughter 3 days later. So and I was in a funk for a year, but, if I didn't, if I hadn't gone through, again, same with both of you, and probably a lot of people on this call, if I hadn't gone through or experienced the trauma, depression, anxiety that I did, I wouldn't have, you know, and again, it was my choice. Everybody's different, but I wouldn't have gotten to that point of enlightenment and to where I am today. So I don't want this to sound, you know, all glossy and, you know, nice. It's not. You know,
No.
it's really about experiencing, you know, those moments, and, you know, then really just asking yourself the question, okay, so what's the lesson in all of this? And I'm kind of getting the chills, you know, so what can I do about this? What do I want to do? I could, you know, I could clearly stay in victim or anger modality. I did that for a long time in my life. But until you realize or get to a point that that's not serving you and you really want to make the choice to change, you know, that's where really the transformation comes in. So it's not easy.
I really relate to what you're saying, Gina, and I think that when you said it's really about the experience, that's really what I think we're here to do. And we think of as experiencing things as only experiencing the things that are pleasant or good, but that's not life. Life has ups and downs and black and white, and there's these opposites, and it's just as important that we experience as much of life as we can. You think about what your life would be like if it was just all level. I mean, sounds good, but it wouldn't be. And I think that's where we're coming from. Dave, you mentioned something, and I have to mention how you were a year and a half ago when I was doing grief counseling with you. That's what we were working on.
Yes.
You were so amazed. You didn't know who you were. Not only did you lose your aspects of your physicality, but you lost the way that you think, your perception changed, you started acting differently, you had these different emotions that you had never experienced before, and it's like looking at yourself from different eyes, and you were scared because you didn't know who that new person was. So this transformation that you made moving from before cancer Dave, to this being afterward was a very scary thing, and it should be. And there is that loss and that grieving of the loss, and then you move forward and get inside this new body and inside these new emotions and see what life has to offer.
So why is it not understood that that's actually reality? I'm still, you know, confused a couple of years after and talking and meeting people and so on. There isn't an understanding of the help that a patient needs as they transition out of the treatment program into survivorship, as they sort of move from patient to person. You know, in my case, I was doing it alone until I met Sheila, and at least I had a friend who had some professional understanding and could help guide me through some next steps. But people generally are on their own. If they're lucky, they've got a cancer coach that they've fallen into some synchronistic event and met. And then there's, of course, this professional psychosocial worker, the therapist who might deal with things in a totally different way. But most of us are alone, and the oncology team that it works with us doesn't sort of pass the knowledge that, hey, you're about to do something that is as scary as it was when you came into getting cancer. The transition from person to patient was full of anxiety, frustration, worry. You were fearful and surprised. Now that we've got a more well-being to deal with, you're now being sent into a new world, and it's going to be as scary and frustrating and anxiety-producing than you could imagine. And yet they just say, well, good luck. You're a good person now. Go to it. And I wish you well. And I don't understand that. I mean, these are professionals who are saying, just get on with your life. I'm at a loss.
Yeah, and I think that's why we're here, Dave, and why you're doing what you're doing, and why Sheila's doing what she's doing. And I can almost like parallel it to life and being a rat on a wheel. You know, in some ways, I think maybe the medical field is that way, where they're not kind of being open to, you know, they're so focused, which is fine, you know, and it's absolutely appropriate. They're so focused on the medical and maybe the psychological, but they're really not focused on what happens next. So I think that's why we're all here. You know, obviously there's therapy, there's psychiatry, there's so many modalities out there, and coaching is a relatively new field, I think like 20 years old. And, you know, I think it's really about us getting out there and opening doors and just raising people's consciousness so that they can understand that these options are out there and available to people. So, yeah, it's, I think it's going to be, you know, something that's going to be upcoming. I'm hoping and I'm praying that it's going to be something that's going to be somehow woven into the medical industry, you know, coaching, and looked at as a, you know, as a, what's the word that I'm looking for, you know, a modality that is acceptable, you know, or on a professional level. I think you guys would, you know, understand what I'm getting to. I can't put my finger on the word, but, you know, a modality that is there for people to use as a resource.
You bet. And you took the words right out of my mouth, Gina, because I feel like just like us, the medical industry, the healthcare community is skating. And they're going across horizontally. Once again, they are doing what they always do, following protocols. And if they're not slowing down and paying attention and being aware of what's really going on, they're going to miss things too. So, you know, people start becoming numbers instead of patients. They become their disease. They become whatever's wrong with their leg or their colon or their breast. You know, they're not stepping outside of the realm of let's fix this, to see and pay attention to what's really going on. I am really excited about what we're doing, though, and that's why I keep showing up here every month, because this is it. People getting together to talk about things like this is going to make the change. I also want to mention that I did my studies through the Center for Mind-Body Medicine out of Washington, D.C., and they have integrated mindfulness and mind-body medicine into medical schools. I think at the time it was in 27 medical schools that physicians were at least required to take one course in mindfulness and mind-body medicine. So it's a step. It's a small step in the right direction.
You know, and you just, in some of the words that you just used, Sheila, you said we have to continue to show up, or we have to show up. And, you know, you're absolutely right, because I remember trying to talk to Sloan Kettering, you know, about the possibility, you know, of bringing coaching in there. And they were like, you know, gee, you're not licensed, you know, you're not a therapist. For legal reasons, we don't allow that. Or we don't permit that, and, you know, there's so much bureaucracy. Now, the point I want to make with the showing up is, so, you know, I'm sure there was a point where I turned around and I said, I'm not good enough, you know, I can't do this, I'm not good enough to do this coaching is not that credible, so, you know, what am I going to do? Maybe I'll just toss the towel in. But, you know, like the three of us, we keep showing up because, you know, this is in our heart, and this is our soul, this is our passion. And, you know, despite the bad days and, you know, even being knocked down and trying to build our businesses, we continue to show up. And I think that's what we want to teach to our clients as well, is no matter what knocks you down, you want to, you know, you just want to continue to show up. And I was actually leading a class last night, and one of the students was really so kind, and I forget exactly what he said, but he said something to me like, you've just shown me, like, you know, whatever, that when life throws you a curveball, you become a life coach. So, you know, that just made me feel so good. And that's the stuff that we have to hold on to and reach to when we have our own little funky moments.
Exactly. And we have them. We definitely have them.
So, I mean, you're raising the point that the medical world is treating a cancer patient and survivor using a medical model, and they're assuming to pass the baton on to another support person, you need to be licensed, professionally trained, perhaps a therapist. Is that in fact reality? What do you think that they are expecting that the license and the therapeutic training would do differently to help a person manage this transition process than what a normal cancer coach, who is also professionally trained in coaching and has a specialty and knowledge of cancer? And some of the coaches that I've met have now been certified and licensed in nutrition and lifestyle and wellness. They're getting a set of what I would call credentials, but they're not quasi-medically trained. So what do you think you need? Do you need a therapist? Do you need a coach? Is there something we can share with our audience to help them with that dilemma? Because they may want some help, and their physicians may be saying, you don't get the help, so do it on your own. And the physician may not be endorsing the use of a properly trained coach. So what are we saying to our audience?
Yeah, so I think, Dave, and we probably have spoken about this before, and I'm sure, Sheila, you agree. So there's a time, coaches aren't the magic bullet either. There's a time for therapy. There's a time for pharmacology. There is a time for having a psychiatrist. And there's a time for coaching. So I think, it's about, again, just like we would do in our own lives or with our clients, is in the medical field, trying to somehow undo all of these old patterns. Again, like Sheila said, just going the same route. And I think you guys saw I just pulled something down from my bulletin board, which I had some notes from when I had a session with a mentor, and it was kind of in a funky place, saying, I can't do this. I'm not as good as the other coaches. And I don't know, I don't know if I'm good enough to do this. And she drew out this little diagram for me, and I think this is really somehow, and maybe you guys could help me out with this. Somehow this is the way we have to get the message across. No, we haven't had, I have degrees, but I'm not trained as a therapist or a social worker. I have a bachelor's degree in psychology. I have my coach training. But what do I bring to the table? So I bring who I am to the table and all my life experiences. I bring my coach training. I bring, the degrees that I have from colleges. I bring, what I have gained from working in my own personal development at times when I've needed therapy, at times when I was in a grief-induced postpartum and I needed medication to help myself. I have that to bring to the table. And I have my cancer experience and my life experience and my constant, my just constant drive to be a work in progress. So look at how much I have to bring to the table. And, when she said it to me in that way, I really couldn't argue with her. So again, it's really, it's not all about the titles after our names or the degrees that we have. It's what we can bring to the table as individuals.
Yeah, and I think that the reason that it's hard for the medical community is there's no CPT codes. There's no billing codes for what we do. We don't fit the mold of a standard traditional medical model. So we're out here doing our work, and here's how I feel about it. It's like going to select a doctor or going to select any person who's going to help you with any part of your life. Choose who feels good to you. You have to trust your gut. And it may be someone with the right credentials as far as the medical community is concerned, or you might resonate with someone who just connects with you on a different level. Gina has experiences that I don't have. I have some that she doesn't have. We're two totally different people, and there are groups of people who will connect with one of us and not the other, and that's fine. So it's really about trusting yourself and seeking out people who you click with and trusting that it's okay regardless of what's behind their name. That's how I feel.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, Sheila, you just said like mountains there or volumes with going with your gut. You know, we're so trained and conditioned to go you know, to go by the rules, and really going with your gut is really the way to make decisions and the way to live and just the way to move
And
forward.
the way to choose your coach or your help or whatever you got, whatever's coming next.
And we're not saying, I think we're not saying coaching is the be all and end all. What we're saying is, you know, this is another modality, and it's open and it's out there for people to access and, you know, try out and use and see if it's right for them.
It's so true that there are resources available for the patient survivor and hopefully someday the caregiver, because they tend to be just ignored during the process, both from the oncology team and some of the social psychosocial workers. But those resources I'm finding are out there. They're hard to find, and certainly those that know about Find Your New Normal, we're trying to assemble those resources in a place that people can come and visit and attend these kinds of presentations, so that you get to learn about the issues and that there are solutions to some of the pain points that you're dealing with in your life. And for those of you in the audience looking for some help, we've got a Cancer Coach directory under development. There's a dozen or so people who are listed in that directory right now that you know, we invite you to go and look, and some of them have got videos in there to try and explain who they are and what they do to build a relationship with you so that you can make that choice that Sheila's talking about. And hopefully you'll come back to our show next week, or next month rather, when we carry on the conversations with the people who are focused in on making a difference in the cancer journey that so many of us are facing. Before we close out, let me pass it back to Sheila and Gina. Let me go to Gina first to just make your closing comments to the audience, and then over to Sheila.
I just want to say thank you, you know, so much for, again, inviting me and Dave, you know, being with you, Sheila. I think we have an amazing connection. One of the things that you know, again, when I was raised in a certain way, just like, you know, all of us were raised, and it was always to succeed and just to succeed and get to the top by myself, without regard to anyone else. And one thing that I did realize in my coach training was the more people that I allow into my life, you know, the more I can succeed, and we can succeed together. So, you know, I just want to put that out there. The more connections we have, the more help we have, the more we work together, you know, the more we can create new beginnings, raise the consciousness of the world, you know, make people happier in the space that they're living. So, you know, thank you so much. And, you know, just going back to gratitude, thank you for allowing me to be here with you. I'm flattered and I'm honored.
And we are glad that you spent time with us today. And over to Sheila.
Well, I'm also always grateful to be here, feeling so blessed to have connected with you, Dave, however long ago that was. And we were talking just a few minutes ago about what makes us continue on as coaches. And in the very beginning, I was working very hard at being the right coach, you know, the coach that looked like this or looked like that. And when it came down to the point where I can just let go of all that, be exactly who I am, that's when things started changing for me. So I think that's just another message that I'd like to pass on to patients, caregivers, and possibly other coaches, is to really hang on to yourself. Just be whatever shows up, be that person, because that's who you're supposed to be.
Great words to close out. Thank you both for being here, making this another enjoyable conversation. I invite everyone to come and visit with us at the end of August, when we'll have another exciting topic. And I'll just stop the recording now, but invite Sheila and Gina just to stay online to finish off the event. Thanks very much, everyone. See you next month. Take good care of yourself. Bye for now.